Hello and welcome to episode 11 of The Puzzle, wherein Isaac and I tackle the world's most challenging business issues for
In
10
10
minutes
minutes.
straight. Yes, joking aside, Isaac and I bring our experience as engineers, business professionals who have seen different things, experienced different things, both hardships and good stuff, and we try to discuss issues that we find relevant and other practitioners do as well. Today's topic is how to integrate customers' feedback into your product, which I think is extremely important both for innovation but also improving existing products. So, Isaac, why don't you open up this one?
Yeah, so hello everyone. The idea behind this question is that it comes from actual experience, both in the past as well as something that is more recent to me. And the full question is, how do you avoid turning a product into a patchwork of wishes and features and what some people call a feature factory? Uh, and that's where we start. So how do you avoid turning something where you have a product vision in your mind into something that is a Frankenstein that aims to please all users at the same time, even though they might be different segments, have different needs, and so on. Bruno, what do you think? We can riff on this a bit.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you, and I think it was in a book by Nathan Furr and Dyer. They had this small sentence that I really like that I think accurately describes the relationship, and that is kind of customers validate, innovators innovate. So the only thing customer can do is confirm if what you're making is or isn't valuable to them. But it's your job, a product developer or any other type of developer who's responsible for the product, to actually decide what you want to do, what kind of features, services, etc. you want to make. You cannot abscond that responsibility. And people have taken it to extreme in some cases where they're basically trying to get customer to tell them what should be done. And how can you expect customer to tell you what should be done? The customer is usually not an expert in all the facets of what needs to happen to develop a product, to take the product to market, to make a whole operating model around it, to make that profitable, to run a business. It's not their responsibility. So how could they tell you? And you mentioned the feature factory, a wish list. That's another thing. And one more thing before I hear your reflections is, for this, I find it useful to look at the product from different maturity perspectives, right? Do you already have something? Are you at the idea stage? Are we talking about something very mature that already has a customer base? All these three are very different in kind of what kind of customer input you're looking for and what kind of customer input is valuable and how you should be collecting it to generate this trustworthy insight.
And how much and with which methods do you gather it? One thing that I find should never die out as a method or as a way of gathering feedback is observation. So no matter how you can do interviews, you can go and look at people working the field if it's something you can observe people using with their hands. You can observe, do screen capture and see whether they struggle to click here or there. You can see how the product is used actually along its entire life cycle. For example, for industrial good, it's not only about the use. The use also has a previous stage, which is the installation. So you need to make it easy to install. You need to make it easy to use. You need to make it easy to repair, to install and uninstall spare parts. If you take into account the full life cycle of the product, everything that the product goes through. So if the product were a character, you need to think through the eyes of the character. What does the character experience? Experiences repair, maintenance, commissioning, decommissioning, daily use, wear and tear. If you take this view and you observe the reality of this implement, this artifact, this product, through the eyes of the product itself. And of course, then you look at how people who dance around it, as I say, they deal with all those things that the product experiences, then you're very likely to understand not only where the needs are, the actual needs that they might deal with every day, the customers or the users that might deal with every day, so much so that they accept them and they do not they're not cognizant anymore that something annoys them, take for granted. But you'll also be able to identify opportunities for improvement and potentially entire steps of the product's use or life cycle that you can cut out of. You need to question whether every job that every function that the product fulfills, whether it is a really necessary part of the product's existence, or whether it's something that you inherit from the past. So I think observation throughout the entire life cycle, both of the product and its use context and its users, is the one thing that you should never leave aside. Of course, as you said, I agree. It depends on whether you're starting off on a totally blank slate, which you practically never have, but rather a blank slate, or whether you're looking into a product category, a product family that you know is close to maturity, and now you're thinking about whether it's worth investing a bit more to fix it, to make it prettier, to improve it a bit. If it's software, to refactor it, change the UI a bit, change some interactions, to give it a second wind in its life cycle, or whether you're talking about something that is more towards the growth, where you need to demonstrate goodwill to the customers. So there's no answer that you should do this all the time, you should do this way. There's no one answer for the amount and the methods, but you need to adapt as you grow it. Otherwise, exactly, you risk turning the product into basically a Frankenstein monster of everyone's wishes. Everybody bolts on their wishes on it.
Yeah. So it's kind of if we are thinking about what has worked or what hasn't worked. What I've seen, for example, work very well, because when we think about customer feedback, right? There is this thing you said, observation, but there's also the thing of it has to be active. And this requires some activity from the customer to come back to the business, to come back to you, etc. And in every interaction with your customers or prospects, etc., there is an opportunity to bias them. Biases are normal. So kind of, we are usually discussing biases in negative light, but you could also say that biases are nothing but heuristics, which helps us to make sense of the world and situation faster. Now, what I have found useful is when we think about customer feedback. One way to use it very effectively is whenever we consider what next we want to do with the product, either introduce new features, new functionalities, or remove features and functionality. So that should be a mix of kind of domain expertise, development expertise, and customer needs and feedback. So that should be considered when coming up and potentially even prioritizing these features. And then the second time, and this time where we want to increase the amount of customer feedback, is when we determine, okay, Bruno came up with this feature or new functionality, new value proposition. Are customers going to favorably react to that? And we should not do that by asking them, would you be happy with this? So like this, would you, are horrible questions. They can make for a good TV. But in terms of asking, I mean, the best customer feedback is them doing something. So if we want to introduce something new, we're not sure if we're allowed to sell it, because it's not always possible to pre-sale or fake sell things.
True.
That's a great type of customer feedback. So it's kind of, these two are, I think, two good moments to have like a rule of thumb. Hey, we need some customer feedback here. We shouldn't just go on kind of domain expertise and like in-house know-how. We should take something, gather something from the customer.
I would even say that domain expertise in-house becomes increasingly unreliable. Especially what I've seen in premium brands. Within premium brands, there is a certain self-reinforcing cycle where the narrative is, why are we so successful? Because we know our customers and they love us, because we know what kind of products to give them. And then, okay, so why do we know what products to give them? Because we're so successful. And why are we so successful? Because no products you give them. So the justification is, of course we know. And then it can become hubristic, where you say, of course we know better than the customer, because what does the customer know? Especially when you talk about some segments where you want to introduce some functionalities or different UX or different ergonomics or different user experience in general. It doesn't need to be software. In segments where you have had a lot of expertise and the way of doing things is established, and it has been determined for decades, possibly by a handful. Let's say handful can be thousands, but it's a handful compared to potential millions of users by the experts. There's a big risk in becoming hubristic, and in the sense that you can be let's say become derogatory towards the customers who know the market and the product best. And at the same time, you can risk being in the other end of the spectrum, meaning oversimplifying the product, where you aim. So the one is, I make the expert product, only the experts can use it, and then I reduce my addressable market because nobody will be able to use it, so you're not going to expand the market. The other end is, I make it super dumbed down, and then everybody can use it, but then you don't have the experts on your side, because by doing that, you are implying that you are dinosaurs, you're going to be dying out soon, it's time for you to reduce this oligopoly. And I've seen this actually happen. It's horrible, but this can happen.
And Isaac, it's 10 minutes are out, so this is perfect. And before I close, I just want to share a word of caution to everybody listening. Customer feedback is important for developing good products, but if you are switching industries or sectors or something, do consider that the type of feedback and how it's collected could be very, very different. I have seen a case where a very successful innovator and a business leader from fast-moving consumer goods moves into infrastructure business, and thinks that the same type of customer relationship, customer feedback can be gathered and used to create improvements and features in infrastructure business, and they failed miserably. So consider that, please. And with that being said, thank you for listening. Join us next time when we're going to be discussing how to make good decisions in product development.
Very good. Bye-bye.